I met Marlowe when he traveled to Fort Sill. I was living in Lawton, Oklahoma. I had a butane propane gas company there for many years. That's why I was there. My first husband was a petroleum engineer, and he had been in World War II. I met Marlowe, and he was like a gypsy selling uniforms. I couldn't imagine you could make a living selling uniforms. He had a blue station wagon that looked very old. He had about 6 or 7 uniforms, very little insignia. So when he wanted me to marry him, and I thought, I don't know, this is really kind of a scary deal. And Marlowe was still about $37,000 in debt from the fire. He hadn't really been able to pay the customers off, the creditors off, because he needed all the money he had to live at that time. So I decided, okay, I loved him enough to try. And our first trip was down to Fort Polk, Louisiana. And it was the heart of the Vietnam War. The officers' clubs were just packed with the young soldiers. So many young faces, really fine young boys. I was 43 at the time, and I thought I was young enough, and I enjoyed talking to them, and I would get all these young men over, and I would sell them the uniforms, and Marlowe just stood there measuring. And so when the evening was over, he gave me a hug and laughed. He said, I think we're going to make it. And I said, I know we will. So that's the way it started. But in about a couple of years here, I realized that trying just to get a commission on these uniforms, I didn't think that we were being paid our share of the money. So I had already set up like a bookkeeping system for us on our customers, but I went back for about 4 years from Marlowe's orders, and I made index cards on every customer with their name, address, sizes, which we could follow up and mail them letters, for sales. We printed up a price list that we would mail to them, and so they would eventually order by mail or telephone. I had discovered that there were a lot of names, and I don't think that it was intentional. I think sometimes with companies, when they're trying to pay on a commission basis, they might get lost in the shuffle. But they owed us over $5,000. And that money was a good big start for us. And it was about that time the Army came out with the Army TWs. So we contacted a place down in Sherman, Texas, that would cut and make the pants and trousers from the same bolted material, because everybody else was selling, like Afy's was selling the shirts made one place and the pants another, and nothing ever matched. Well, I remember coming up here to Fort Leavenworth, we would have these huge boxes shipped up here, and we had to sell them all because we couldn't take them with us. But I spent all day long just pulling out these. We would sell them, I think it was like $20, shirt and pants. And everybody was buying TWs. I remember working at Bell Hall from 7 in the morning until 6 in the evening, 12 hours standing on that concrete floor, and I was really tired. But that's the way it was in the officers' clubs. We would work from 10 until 12 at night. I personally traveled with Marlowe for 18 years, that we calling on the different clubs. But back in 1971, here at Fort Leavenworth, they had built a new PX, and they wanted us to open a uniform store. And I said, we decided, well, if we can get somebody to run it, because we still had to continue calling on military bases to really make a living. So we found a lady that was a wonderful seamstress that would run the shop for us. And but we would still travel, and we would be gone for 3 weeks at a time. We would normally go from Fort Leavenworth to all the way to Fort Bragg, all the bases in between. Then we would come back here, and then we would go all the way to California. Back during Jimmy Carter's administration, we had really a gas shortage. The service stations would only sell you $3 worth of gas. And here we were trying to get from Fort Knox to Fort Bragg. So we had to, of course, gas was only maybe 25 cents a gallon back then, so you would get, quite a bit of gas for $3. But we had to pull off in every gas station that we would see all the way out there to buy gas to get there. So by the time we got there, we were almost on empty. And there was one of the colonels said there is a gas station all around the area there in Fort Bragg. None of them had any gas. But they said that they heard there was going to be a gas station at 4 o'clock in the morning. It was about 5 miles out of town from the post. Well, Marlowe had caught a really bad cold, so this colonel came by, and I drove the car. I followed him to this gas station. This line, we sit there for an hour and a half before we got up to the pump to get gas. So if you think gas is bad now, you should have tried that out.